My hat! All right, so let's say you have an RC and maybe you broke your chassis and you want to make a reinforcement for the chassis, or you just want to skid plate or something to reinforce the chassis even if you didn't break it. Well, I went ahead and already made one just to be sure, but the first thing you want is, so there's one, it's not quite finished yet, but that's an idea of what we're gonna do. So I'm gonna make another one just for fun, one over here, so I'm experimenting. And you need basic tools that you should have around the house, maybe. But one of the things, you want a sheet of paper, and thin paper works. And you want to line up the paper where you want to copy. So if I want to copy this whole section, I would lay it over here. Let's just say I just wanted to copy this section here. I want to place the paper there, and I'm going to use this straight edge as a guide. And I'm just going to run my nail through the edge of the chassis, and I am just going to mark the paper. That's all I'm going to do. As I'm holding it, I'm trying to keep this from moving. You can use tape, so you could tape it. You could use a low adhesive tape, glue, such as, similar glue to what Post-it notes have. You can find some of that and just put some on the chassis, stick the paper so it doesn't move. But whatever you want to copy, that's what you do. So now the lines are marked, as you can see. And then after that, you just have to go grab scissors. Again, if you have a cutting tool, make sure it's sharp. But you're just going to cut out the outline. And just follow the outline all the way. Now I'm not gonna cut this whole thing because I had already made one. So here it is, it's right in here. So I just use scratch paper. And then what you're going to do is you're going to place it over your surface. So a piece of aluminum, in this case I'm using brass, steel, whatever it is. So just lay the template on here and then trace over it lightly, but make sure that when you're tracing, I used a permanent marker, just a regular Sharpie. You trace over the paper and the metal so that you get that nice little fine line. You also run a lower risk of pushing the paper off and not printing. Now, if you look at this template, you will notice that these are not the same. So what I ended up doing is I actually just copied the template this way. And then once I got halfway, I copied this, and then I just flipped it to do that top part. That way I have two parts that are similar. So now what we have to do is we're gonna have to cut it. Now, if you have a rotary tool, I would say that's probably the best thing to use. Use a rotary tool. But if you do not have a rotary tool, such as a Dremel, you can use a jigsaw, which I think is a more common tool, which is why I'm going to use a jigsaw instead. Now keep in mind that will bend your metal a little, especially if you're using a soft metal like brass and aluminum, especially something this thin. This is only about 1 millimeter thick. So you're going to have to straighten it out, and I'm going to go through that process. The other thing too, you will need a drill, and if you don't have metric drill bits, that's fine. I'm going to show you how to do it with a standard drill bit and how to countersink as well. It's basic work. It may not be the prettiest, but it works. So let's go over to cutting. All right, so the first thing you want to make sure you have eye protection, some form of eye protection. If you already wear glasses, that's fine. Earplugs, anything, just eye pro, ear pro, make sure you wear that. And let's just say you don't have a fixed area where you can follow with a jigsaw, for example. That's fine. Just use a 2x4. So 2x4 is tall enough to where the blade is not going to hit your bench. The other thing too is make sure that you have a metal cutting blade, and one of the ways that you can tell is if you look at the teeth, this is wood. So notice the teeth are larger, not as fine, and then once you start getting into the metal blades, they tend to be they have finer teeth. The other thing too is when you're cutting metal, don't run the blade too fast because you're going to overheat it and you're going to damage the teeth. Now, when cutting this, I do not need to go through the line yet because I'm also going to use an angle grinder to grind everything and get close. So it's better actually that you cut on the line or outside of the line than inside, because if you're inside, it's going to be too short. You can't add more material with regular tools. But if you cut outside and you have excess material, you can always grind off. So here goes. Now this is the part where it bends your metal, because as the saw is going up and down, it will move the metal and bend it. So if you want to, you could use another 2x4 and just place it in there. And that works. And what you're gonna end up doing is you're moving this. So it's the plate that you're gonna try to move. You may move the saw as well, but you're gonna go in here. Now, I don't wear latex gloves or rubber gloves when I'm doing this or machining work. And the reason why is if that latex glove gets caught in machining work, especially a lathe or a turn, it could tear your hand out, because latex gloves are actually, it's like a giant plastic rubber band, so you could use a limb. So here I can't really get that shape, that hard shape. So I'm just gonna cut outside, go around it. I'll grind it off later, not a big deal. Oops, don't wanna do that. So the assumption here is that you don't have clamps. I do have clamps in here, but again, we're doing this. When you're making the turns, you want to go slow. And the reason why is if you go too fast, your blade's probably gonna get caught. You run the risk of breaking your blade. So if you notice, I can kind of barely touch the blade, so it's still good. Don't do that. I mean, use a temp gun. I'm just giving you an example. So once in a while, you may have to let your blade cool. If you have oil, you can also put a little bit of oil. Something else that works is just a good little amount, right? Good little amount. WD-40 will help cool and lubricate the blade as it's cutting through. It will actually help the cooling. If you have machining oil, just use machining oil. All right, so at this point, I'm bending the blade a little too much, so I'm just gonna start my cut on the other side. Now, something that you have to watch for once in a while is once you cut in there, that piece of metal could bend up and it could grab onto this plate here or somewhere on your cutting tool, and it won't let your cutting tool to continue moving forward. So you may have to stop and check for that. All right. Now at this point, it would be very tempting to try to bend it, but if you bend it, you will break it. I mean, brass, aluminum, whatever it is, even steel. But I don't want to. So I'm actually going to make a cut over here, cut this extra material so that I can come in, do that turn, and then connect those two cuts. A little bit of oil, well, WD-40. All right, and there is the piece. So now I'm not worried about that little section or that section there. The only thing I'm gonna do is I can try cutting it with the Sawzall, but I may end up bending this. So that, because it's brass, or if it were aluminum, it would be easier for me to use an angle grinder. So that being said, I have the angle grinder right here. And this is all I'm gonna be using. Now, the reason why I'm using the cord one, I do have a cordless one, is the corded one is less expensive. So that Sawzall, you're looking at maybe about $40 plus tax, depending on where you live. So it's not that expensive. I need to make sure I don't erase the lines. Here we go. Angle grinder like this, I don't remember how much I paid. You can get some inexpensive ones for probably around $50. But I'm just gonna use this. Now really quick, when this turns, see that? The blade is gonna turn right, so clockwise. That means that all the sparks are gonna be flying over here. So make sure you're pointing this somewhere where there's nothing flammable. So if you have something flammable, get it out of the way. This has a switch. I'm just gonna grab it and slowly, I'm just gonna work this on this here, on the cutting blade. Now, brass will get hot, so you're gonna have to take some time, I mean, you will feel it, and just let it cool. Something else at this point, I'm gonna go ahead and remove this plastic, because then it's gonna start melting. So whenever you buy metal like this, it will always have a protective sheet on one side. So one side will have it, the other side will not. See, this side started melting. That's where I was trying to cut this off. Now, let it cool so you don't burn yourself, but you will feel it getting hot. And brass cools down pretty fast. It heats up quickly, but it cools down. At this point, if you want, you could use a leather glove, for example, just some form of glove to hold it, just so that you can tolerate a little more heat if you so wanted to. That would be fine. So something like this, you can get these. Costco sometimes has them packs of 3 for, I don't know, $20, something like that. As you're using the angle grinder, you want to walk the blade smoothly. So you're gonna apply some pressure, just not too much pressure. Enough, you'll feel it. It's more of a feel thing, I would say. But I'm just working it to get rid of the line. So there's still a little bit of that Sharpie line right in here. That's what I'm trying to work out. And then I'll move on to this other side. Now, I had a sharp edge right there, so I just took the angle grinder and just smoothed that out, so that's a little rounder now. Now, I do have just a little bit of a mark there, but not a big deal. I'll go ahead, you can probably see it there. I'm gonna go ahead and grind that off. Now, another thing too with the angle grinder, you can feel air coming out. So on this one, you can feel the air pushing out through here. So you just have to hold whatever piece of metal in that area and that'll cool it down. So it'll help cool it down. Now there's a lot better tools that you can get. For example, you can get a little reciprocating saw with a table where you can run this. The blade is very thin, it just goes up and down, so it has two holding points, and then you can run this. That's a lot better, a better tool. This would also be better on a sander, so there's certain belt sanders where you could just move this around. Or they have this little cone on top. It's not a cone, sorry, a cylinder, and it just spins, and then you could just sand there. But again, that costs more money. If you have those tools, use them. If not, this is the way to go. All right, there's still a little more material that I have to remove right over here. So the other thing too is, actually, this is not that, it's a little bent. So for this, you just grab a hammer and you're gonna place it on a surface, but I have to do a little bit of cleaning first. You wanna finish everything first. So see that little edge? I'm gonna clean that edge off. All right, but before I go into all of that, let me mock it on the car first. I'll just place it on the car and make sure it's fine, and then I'll make a few markings to see if I have to remove more material. All right, so it's on the car right now. This looks pretty good, not too bad. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hold it down. Now this is going to be the bottom. And right here, it looks like I have to remove a little bit of material right over here, so I'm just gonna make a mark. Right about there, right about here. So this is where I have to remove material, smooth it out, and then a little bit of material over here as well. And maybe some right over here. All right, so let's get back to grinding. All right, so something else that you could do if you don't manage damaging your template is you could just tape it on, and then you could see where you have to remove material. So that is another option, but I'm not gonna do it. But that's something you could do. So here we go, I'm just gonna finish it off. So for those of you that may be using an angle grinder for the first time, I'm starting somewhat flat, and then I'm bringing this up just so that I can cut a little more, because I want to remove more material down here in the center than I want up here. And that's the reason why, as I'm running this, I'm not running it straight. One, I could damage this part, and I want to keep this high and that high. So I want the valley to be lower, and that's the reason why I'm lifting this. So another thing, when you set the angle grinder down, just make sure that you have control of it. Don't just drop it, because this may accidentally hit the surface, jump all over the place. It'll be a mess. So it's still a little bent, but I'm not gonna worry about that yet. Right now, what I'm gonna do is I'm just going to grab whatever it is, and I'm just gonna set it on top. Now, I did mark this, so I mean, it should be the same shape, so it doesn't matter, but I actually want this to be over here. That's what I was working on, and to be honest, that feels good enough. Now here's the thing, whatever brace that you're making, skid plate, reinforcement, broke your chassis, didn't, you want to select the correct material. So this here, because this is carbon, this is good enough. This metal is good enough, but keep in mind that metals such as brass, they're very soft metals, so they will bend easily, versus steel or a stainless steel, it will be a greater challenge to shape, but they are a lot stronger, so they will not bend much. Now, something else that I was doing with the angle grinder was taking the edge off, but you can also do that with a file if you have a file. And when you're doing that, go at an angle. Don't go straight up and down. It's easier if you just kind of go at an angle. And as I'm filing, I'm sort of doing this motion. So again, you don't need very expensive tools. These files, these are probably some of the cheapest tools that I have. If you have the handles, I mean, these handles I think were from old files from Harbor Freight. But this here, I think this was an $8 file at Lowe's. Can't really see the brand. Nicholas, it's a Nicholas brand. Yep. This one here's a cheaper one. Tools, angle grinders, for example, you can find good and expensive angle grinders. Like this Makita here was probably 50, 55. Don't go too cheap on your tools, because then they're just going to heat up. They're going to overheat. So try to get something that's, you know, good, that's decent. But you don't have to get the best. All right. So now we are ready. So now I have to straighten this out. It's not going to take much. Usually you want paper or a plastic film or another piece of wood to protect it so that you don't mar the metal. But I'm not worried about it. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to pound so you can feel. You should be able to see how this is bent out. So I need to bend this in. And it's not really going to take much, to be honest. If I need to, just go gentle. I don't want to use the ball because I don't want to mark this, but it's almost there. Let's see, this is the part I want to straighten out. Close. That's close enough. All right, so the next step now, and this is one of the reasons why I didn't want to damage that template, although I can always make a new template, is the following reasons. So I'm going to grab the car. Now, I'm not taking the body off on purpose. But one of the things that you want to do is you want to lay the template on top. And the reason why is because you are going to be marking now which holes you want. Now, it is possible that you may want all of these. It is possible that you don't. So for example, in my case, the only holes that I want are actually, I'm going to want the second one, just the ones that go onto the A block, and then probably these outer ones. And the reason why is I don't want to drill that many holes. I'm just doing this as an example. Here, so let me just go ahead and grab the template, which I managed to drop. And you're just going to grab this and line it up again. So you line it up. And you're going to use your nails once again. And all right, so the holes that I want are the second ones. So if I lift this, it's these two. So if you just run your nail in there, you will mark the entire head of the screw along with the hex. So you should be able to see the hex in there. So I'm going to do that to the other one. And the reason why I want that is because that hex, that's the center point that I want. So let me go ahead and use, let's say I want that outer one. So if I can get the whole screw, it'll give me a better idea of where the center is. But that hex, that's pretty much where I'm going to line up my point. And the other one is right here. All right, there we go. So I have them all. Once you have them all, you can just use a pencil, and then you can just mark the center with a pencil or a pen, whatever you have handy, it doesn't matter. I do have pencils, but the point isn't very sharp, so I'm gonna use a pen. And I'm gonna go ahead and just try to mark the center as best as possible, because that's where I'm gonna put my punch. that's my point right there. And try to use a paper that doesn't have lines. This line's too close to the point. Luckily, I'm using a blue pen, although I'm not sure how much that helps me considering I'm colorblind. But only in the dark. I'm only colorblind in the dark. There we go. All right. So once you have that, you just need to grab a punch and try to get a fine punch, which I successfully misplaced. Actually, well, no. This is good enough for now. Probably lent it. That's usually what happens. If you want to know how to lose tools, just lend them. It's the easiest way to lose tools. All right, you're going to set this. Now, at this point, it would be a good idea to tape this down. But you're just going to set the punch on one of those points, and you want to center it as best as possible. So just grab the little point, place it here, and punches are not too expensive. You can go to the Home Depot, Lowe's, for example, Ace Hardware, and just buy a single punch. They have different sizes there, and you only need one. And you only need just one blow. If you're working on brass or aluminum, you do not need to strike it too hard because it is soft metal. But if you're working with maybe stainless steel, you maybe need to strike it a little harder than you would with some softer metals. But let's see. Should have held it with my other hand, but that's fine. And all right, so this punch is lined up, this punch is lined up, and this punch will be lined up as well. And great, all right, so you probably can't see in the camera, but I'm just lining up the punches, and the reason why I'm lining them up is I want to make sure this is square. So that one lines up, that one lines up, this one lines up. So now I'm doing this one right over here, very last one. And that is it. So looking at them right now, I can tell you I don't like them. What happened? Let's see. It's not difficult to correct, to be honest. Yeah, I'm gonna blame the template. If the chassis were off, it would be much easier. Oh, it's that one. Let me just measure twice, cut once. One moment. I may just make another template. There's so much writing on here, and I forgot what side this goes. Let's see. All right, so that one would be all right there. That one would be fine there. This one. So right now I'm just running the punch in the holes. I'm gonna line it up. I mean, it's not that hard to see that one of these is a little off. All right, so that one is lined up, as long as I line up the bottom two. All right, bottom two are fine. We're fine, and then I moved it. Let's see. All right, there it is. Bottom two are good to go. That one is good to go. And this one will go here. It's kind of difficult with a camera. It does block the light sometimes, so you have to move your head, because sometimes the camera has to be right where your head is. Actually, that's not too far away from where it should be. It's really not that far at all. Very close. Just moved a little. All right, so it's that second one. but you really want to make sure that is marked well. So whatever hole you're drilling, make sure it's marked well. You could also flip it and just do it on the other side. So what you're going to end up doing is you're going to end up drilling a pilot hole. So the pilot hole is just going to be an initial hole. And for that, you're just going to be using a smaller drill bit. Now, I'm purposely using standard drill bits because they're the most common. So I'm going to show you, even if you don't have metric, you can use standard drill bits to work this out. Now, the screw is a 3mm screw. So right now, I'm going to use a drill bit that is a lot smaller. This is close to 1mm, which in standard would be 1/16. And here I'm just going to create a gap with these 2 wooden blocks. Place the drill bit. Do not apply too much pressure on it because 1, it's soft metal. 2, you can break such a thin drill bit. You could also bend it, which is still bad. All right, now this is brass, it's softer. I could drill faster if I wanted to, but I'm not going to. But steel, definitely slow down. Make sure you lubricate the bit, so use a little machining oil, WD-40, whatever you have. Now, something that you could do as well, which is a good idea, is to just measure all the holes, diagonally everything, with whatever chassis you're working on. That's really the best way to go. But I'm going to show you that if you make a mistake, you can't correct the mistake. Oh, saw how I accidentally bent it there? I actually fell off balance. You couldn't see my feet. Now you could buy, if you have a drill press, use that. I mean, then again, if you have a drill press and all that good stuff, then you've probably done this before. But you know, the idea behind this video is if you don't, or if you've never made something like this, but you can buy a drill press, a small one, for maybe $130, somewhere around there. You could buy like a Porter Cable, Craftsman, whatever it is. There's a few out there that you could use. All right, good. All right. So right now I'm just going to set this on top, and what I'm looking for, although there's too much brightness, is I'm looking for that screw, if you can see it. Now if you think the hole is too small, that's fine, don't worry about it, but that's all that you're looking for. So you're looking for the holes to align. Something else, you could lift it just a little and look at the gap and see if there's some light in there. You could just drop some pins. It's up to you. But like I said, the best way to go, to be honest, is to just grab a tape and then just measure. So if you just used a tape, right, you could measure from this hole, and we're going to that hole, so we're here 2 3/8 approximately. And everything should be square, so this should be 2 3/8 as well. So 2 3/8, good. And then you can measure this over here, so we're going from 10 to there, so we're looking at about 11/16, so 1 11/16. If we look at that hole, It's a little wider, but it's fine. Like I said, we'll be able to correct that. And this one, what was it? Is about 2 3/8. All right, 2 3/8. Yeah, that's about right. So it's a little shorter than 2 3/8. So this diagonal works. This diagonal, this one is 2 3/8. So this just a little short. That one, that should work. And now I'm just going to measure this. It's about 1 1/8. And it's so difficult to find a metric tape here in this area. So I have to use the standard one. That one is narrow. So I should have gone with this whole push this one out just a little. But I'll be able to do that with a file. So it's not a big deal. Why am I holding the tape there? That's a good question. So if I do that with a file, I don't really need to. I'll correct it with a drill bit. Brass is soft enough. So I'll correct it with a file later on. So right now I'm just going to move on to the next steps. All right, so at this point, now you want a hole that your screw will go through. And this is the one that we need right here. So let's go ahead and use this one here. Now, really quick, let me just grab a screw so that I can show you the difference. So we'll pause for a moment. All right, so the first one that I used was 1/16. Now I'm going to use 1/8, and 1/8 is just a little larger than the screw, just a bit larger. So I'm going to go ahead and just drill through these real quick. Now, if you're doing this by hand, the other reason why you want to go slow is you don't want to go all the way in and damage the surface on your bench. That's the reason. All right, so here we go. Next one. Now, if this were a harder metal, such as steel, stainless steel, for example, I probably would have been using something to clamp it down, just in case it catches on the bit, it doesn't spin, and I don't hurt my hand. But brass, this is so soft, it's gonna cut. So the bit's gonna cut through, no problem. Now, something else that you should always have whenever you're working with metal is some tweezers, just in case one of these little buggers gets stuck in your skin. So make sure you have a pair of tweezers. I used to have a pair of tweezers, but my wife took them. I'm kidding. When she sees this video, she's going to hit me. That's fine. I like it when she hits me. But we'll see. Alright, so I'm just trying to clean this up. Alright, good stuff, good stuff. Wheels on the way. I really need to clean this, but this is the cleanest bench I have right now, believe it or not. Alright, so screw goes through, and the screw goes through. Now, if this were a plate that were going to go on top and you didn't have to worry about countersinking, then don't worry about it. But in this case, I do have to countersink. I do need to work that. Now, if you don't have the proper tools, don't worry about it. You can just use drill bits. So I'm going to show you right now. This is going to be the bottom portion. So this is what I'm going to be working on. This is the back. So this is what's going to attach to the chassis. So this is the part that I'm working on. Now, I'm going to do it in steps. So first, no one drill bit that I have found is perfect to do something like that. So that means that I'm actually going to take it in steps. So I'm going to use 3/16, and then I'm going to use a 1/4 inch drill bit. So right now, I will use the 3/16, and I will drill down until it gets almost to the bottom. Now in this case, if you have wood, just do it on top of the wood. The wood will create some resistance. And if you look at this little section right over here, I have some few little holes, so that's where I'm going to work. And drill slow because you don't want to go all the way through, because then you just ruined the hole. So just take it slowly, remove some material, and then see if you have to remove a little more. And I have to remove a little more. You should be able to see there. So I want to go all the way to that little bottom portion. It's not really focused. Oh, well, there you go. So you see that little flat edge toward the bottom? I want everything to be half the same slope. So I'm going to keep going down until I get to that portion. And just a little more. So just take it slow, check. And I'm not applying that much pressure. Actually, I still have quite a bit more, so I'm taking it too slow. Almost there. Just a little more. All right, that should be good. So I wanted everything to have about the same slope going down. So I think I'm down to the bottom portion. So let's see if the camera will get it. Yeah, it's kind of getting it. All right, so at this point, I'm gonna go ahead and switch drill bits. I'm gonna do the other 3 holes off camera since it's the same process. So now I'm gonna grab the larger one. And if you were working with different size screws, then you would have to use the appropriate bits. But for this size, this is what I found that works. So now the same hole, but now I'm using a 1/4 inch. All right. Now, at this point, once you get to the last one, you want to just kind of set the screw in and see how much more you have to go deeper. And to be honest, it's the other bit that I have to work with. So I'm just going to drill a little more with this, and then I'll go back to the previous bit and drill with that. So all right. 1/4 inch, just a little more with a 1/4 inch. Just a little more with a 1/4 inch, and then I'll go back, I'll step down a bit. Step down a bit, haha. All right. Let's do... Let's do this one. So we're back to the smaller bit. And I'm gonna go ahead and set the screw. Ooh, just a little more. Just a little more. And again, take your time. Oh, that's almost close enough. To be honest, I could probably just use a file and finish it off. It's probably what I need. No, I'm actually gonna have to drill just a little more. Right. We have that. And that's close enough. I'm gonna do the rest with the file. I could use the drill. I'm just use the drill. Backed it out. All right, so that one I actually went too far, but that's fine. I'm gonna use the file and clean it up. And I didn't continue, but it's all right. All right, so that's the damage there. It's here, it's there, but I stopped, so I still have a good amount here, but it's fine because the head of the screw will still grab over here. And this will happen. Didn't happen with the other one. Should have recorded the other one instead. That's all right. There we go. I see there's plenty of surface area. There's plenty of meat there for this to grab onto. So even if you look at the rear, see, there's a little bit of the damage, but this will hold on quite well. Again, soft metal, it's bound to happen. So now I just need to clean this up with the file. And then once I do this, I'm gonna countersink the other ones. And I'm gonna show you the final product. But to be honest, I think I needed the larger hole because this is so thin, it's only 1 millimeter. If you look at that, I actually need a larger drill bit because this is more than 1 millimeter high. So there, yeah, that's it. So actually that mistake wasn't a mistake. It works out perfectly. So here you go. So I'm just gonna do the rest of them off camera really quick and then we'll be back. All right, so at this point, so you can just set this, see if it'll be close enough. Okay, so this one, I think I'm gonna have to go out on both of those, but I'm gonna try it out anyway. So I'm just gonna remove 2 of these screws. And let's see this one right over here. I'm gonna see how it fits. Now, like I said, it's not a big deal. This metal is so soft, I can just fix it with a file. But, you know, when I did the measurements, like I said, they were too short. So, yeah, measure everything before you cut. Measure twice, cut once. But let's see, all right. So let me go ahead and put that screw in there. There we go. I'm able to put it in the driver. So, quick little note, I actually ended up drilling this holes out a little larger because this is only a 1 millimeter plate, so I had to go larger. So if you use a 3 millimeter bit, go through it again and use a 4 millimeter. In this case, it was a 5/32. So I'm not going to screw these in all the way. I'm just gonna get them close. Yeah, see this one I have to fix. I'm pretty sure. But let's see, just in case, is this grabbing on? Maybe. Yeah, that is tightening. All right. So it's going to be something minor. I'll fix it, but then I'll show you. That's pretty close. I didn't mess up that much. That one's fine. And this one works as well. Actually, it's very, very little what I have to fix. So if you look at these two, it's very little. So I'm just going to grab a file and I'm just going to file away over here. So these are good. Those will be good. But then after this, what you're going to do is you're just going to clean everything with some little rubbing alcohol. And then after you clean it with a little rubbing alcohol, I'm just going to put this in my small little oven. It's just a regular oven, not a microwave. Do not put this in a microwave. Just a regular small 12-inch pizza oven. Warm it up, and then I'm going to spray it with paint. So I'll show you that one in a bit. All right, so I just took the brass plate out of the oven. I just put it in there for 350 degrees Fahrenheit. That's what my oven reads for. Just 2 minutes is fine. By the time it heats up, everything, 3, whatever, doesn't matter. Everything was cleaned with alcohol first, so now I'm just going to spray it. So at this point, I'm just gonna let it dry in the sun. I'm gonna walk with it. I sprayed accidentally a little too much, so it'll probably run, but I'll catch you once I start installing it. So here's the plate that I made, and this will cover this spot nicely, just so that debris and things don't get in there. Aerodynamics as well. You know, whatever the reason, like I said, it's to reinforce. Maybe you broke your chassis a little, you don't want to buy a whole new chassis. I mean, brass, you can buy these things at, well, when we had Orchard Supply, that was a great place to buy it. But there's other hardware stores where you can just buy a sheet, and depending on the size, it might be $10, $20. 20 centimeter by 20 centimeters probably going to run you about $20. So it's less expensive than buying a whole new chassis. Again, assuming you're getting into the hobby, maybe you picked one of these new, used. If you've been in it for a long time and you've been competing, then you would probably just buy another chassis. But that being said, this is what it is. There is a small little run. I'm not worried about it. It's probably going to get scraped. Now, the reason why I didn't want to use duct tape, for example, is the chassis will hit and then it'll work kind of as a brake if it hits. And it'll start coming apart. I did not have aluminum on me, but I would have preferred that because it's lighter. But as you can see, it fits, it feels good. I did have to file the sides just a little. Now the screws that I'm using are about a millimeter longer than the original screws, and that's on purpose. Now, one of the reasons why on this one I chose just to do those 4 holes is because I don't want to make this more rigid than it should be. I do want, on this particular car, just a little bit of flex. That's the reason why. But even these 4 screws with this brass plate will increase the rigidity of the vehicle, but that's not the goal. I could have made this out of plastic as well, if I had plastic. But that's not as durable, so aluminum is probably a better way to go. The only thing with aluminum I will mention is when you're cutting, especially when you're using a file or a grinder, it just gunks it up. So you have to clean the grinder blade, whatever you're using, or sometimes even your saw blade. But here we go. So you can see, you don't want to over tighten these, and the reason why is remember, your screws are steel, and this is screwing onto an aluminum piece. So if something will get damaged, you don't want it to be that aluminum piece. That's the reason why. But now that this is on here, I'm going to show you how it fits. So let me show you the side view. I mean, I'm touching it, this feels great, but here from the top, see how neatly those screws fit? I mean, that's what you want. If the screws are too far out, you're gonna wear out the heads and then it'll be very difficult to back them out. But see how these are just slightly under the surface of the brass. So that means the plate is gonna hit first before the screw. But that's what we have here. And depending on the size, on the material, if you're using brass, you're looking at about 8.7 grams per cubic centimeter. Aluminum is about 2.7. So if you use aluminum, aluminum has a lower density, it'll be much lighter. You're looking at about a third of the weight versus brass. Brass is about 3 times heavier. But we have the front and the rear. The rear is actually the first one I made, but I like the second one. The second one's a lot better. This one here, for example, a plate this size, if you're familiar with this chassis, with this Yokomo, this is about 30 grams. It's 1 millimeter thick, and the front one with paint, this one's about 36 grams. So if I had used aluminum, I would be looking at about 10 grams and maybe 12 grams, which is at some point I'm probably gonna do. Right now I'm just gonna try it and see if that keeps debris from going in there. The best thing would be to just run it only on prep surfaces, but it's not always the case over here in these parts. But other than that, there is the plate. Thank you so much.